there's lots of change. And again, we're not sure what the motives are. And then the first sort of ding that you get is, hey, we're going to double your affiliate fees. And I'm sure that really was, it's not about $1,500 or $2,000. I want to just go out and say that one of the things I loved about CrossFit was that as an early affiliate, I was grandfathered in at $500, and they respected that for taking a risk. Thank you, Kelly, for being early on. We're going to respect that. Whether that should change or grow, whatever. But what I can tell is I'm sure that it wasn't the money. It was the idea that the first thing that you went to was this person who is the reason you have a business in the first place, right? It's not the games. It's not something else. It's this local affiliate. And the first thing you did was ask a little bit more for us. And I'm sure that was very, very stinging.
Yeah. I mean, our affiliate hasn't been around anywhere near that long. And we've been paying the $3,000 for some time. It wasn't shocking to us. We saw it coming. I think everyone saw it coming to some degree. I think it was the delivery that seemed shocking to a lot of people. To your point, like the mindset for the $500 was, thank you for taking a chance on us, and we're going to respect it. And they respected it for a long period of time. And then to just pull that Band-Aid off very quickly, I think caught a lot of people off guard, not because it happened, but because, again, my opinion, CrossFit's communication leading up to that point, I think everyone would agree, is a little sketchy. I don't mean like intentionally sketchy, like they're just not great at telling their own story. I had a boss once that used to tell me this all the time. He said, don't let anyone else tell your narrative, ever. Like, always control your own story. And they've done a really poor job with that. Even Don, when he was rolling this thing out, said he was shocked at the number of people that didn't know that CAP programming was free. And that's an example of, if you had told that story in advance of all the things you've done leading up to the price increase, probably would have been received a little better. Because now the perception is, hey, we got a lot of value prior to this. And so now you're having to go back and remind everyone what you've done. And I think that caught a lot of people off guard.
Is that water so far down that poor communication, and that's the communication straw that broke the camel's back? Is it indicative of something? The question is, what is CrossFit and who owns it, and how would you have CrossFit Inc. serve you better as an affiliate? Like, that's a fundamental question, because what I'll tell you is that CrossFit was, and an old guard, Tony Budding, pulled me aside. We were on the airplane come back from an affiliate gathering, and he said, look, CrossFit will do nothing for you, but we'll do everything for you. And I really felt like that was always true. That it was my bed to make, it was my relationships to make, it was my hustle to have. And did that support come back? Can you support 10,000, 15,000 the way that some of the OG people feel like is necessary? Could Greg have individual relationships? It used to be, we'd get on a call and there'd be 20 affiliates on the call with Greg. And just touching base once a month. Hey, what's going on? How you doing? He'd call people out, knew people's names and their kids. At some point, that scale just becomes too large where we can't possibly be in touch. So what is it that we want from headquarters that's going to change and put people in my gym? Like, I think that's the fundamental question, because there was plenty of times where I was like, okay, you gave guns out as prizes. That feels super sketchy, right? This thing that I have on my name, now you're giving out handguns and right after shootings. Like, that was a choice that at some point I'm like, well, this company doesn't represent me sometimes. Like, but you know what I mean? I guess that's the question, is what are we looking for that we're not getting as affiliates?
This is what I love about having OGs on the show, because you guys remember where all the bodies are buried. You remember all the crazy shit that happened. People look back on Greg's tenure of owning this place, and I say this with all due respect and love for Greg. They look back on it as if the guy never did anything half-cocked. And again, that's with respect. I remember that gun situation. Like, people lost their minds over that. Absolutely lost their minds over it. And
I'll start with the saying that my whole career as a professional cannot be told without CrossFit. Cannot be told without Greg Glassman giving me a platform. Cannot be told with the experiment and the connection that happened. I just got a text from James Hobart. So all my friends still CrossFit. We still CrossFit. I love CrossFitting. We'll always CrossFit. Even as a 50-year-old man with a fake knee, I'm going to CrossFit the rest of my life.
Yep.
So I think simultaneously we should recognize that we always have had a tricky relationship with CrossFit Inc. because there was always a dynamic tension of, hey, you guys can't just go out and create your own independent empire and pretend like it's not CrossFit. We saw Jason Kalipa try to do that. You've seen a lot of people say, hey, maybe this isn't working. Maybe I can do better on my own. And CrossFit was always like, go ahead. Just don't pretend like you're CrossFitting. And always they were super loyal and would come back around. Yep. And no bridge was ever burned. They were always willing to pull you back in and give you another chance. Always. The question is this just a different kind of relationship of dynamic that we're having, or is this the feature? Because we all had, I don't know, what do we gross? Like $4 million a year as our little shitty affiliate in San Francisco. I mean, we paid so many people living wages and had health insurance and a vibrant community. And that's all because the name was San Francisco CrossFit.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
You can't even do that anymore.
Yeah.
For what it's worth.
You couldn't do that after we did it. They were like, I think it was Trident CrossFit that they were like, okay, you can't do that anymore.
Yeah. That has been a rule for a long time for people who don't know. It is like very hard to name affiliates nowadays. There are so many rules and there are like 0 identifiers allowed, like zip codes, states, cities, like,
and
it's
the
tough.
only reason we were San Francisco CrossFit and CrossFit San Francisco is that a guy was squatting on the domain.
Oh, what a pain in the butt.
I know. So we're like, okay, San Francisco CrossFit. He's like, I own that one too. I was like, no, you don't. Check GoDaddy.
In the name of Dr. Stewart.
That's right.
I think fundamentally what you're describing here, Kelly, is like people just don't understand the cultural differences between Greg's world and this private equity world. Everyone remembers and knows what Greg did, but they don't understand the dynamics of a culture in a company owned by an entity that expects profits.
Yeah, that's 100% a true statement. And I think that is, at the heart of this is this a wealth extraction machine? And that may be in tug of war with. I don't think Greg ever had a problem making money or putting that money back into communities. He bought me lots of dinners. The generosity of CrossFit HQ was pretty powerful. And if you couldn't pay your bill, they would cover you. They did a lot of very personal things that is from, let's just say it's from a different era for sure. I think you really are. And is that very foundational conversation? Is that the split? What I'll tell you is that I have Greg Glassman's number on my phone. I can text Greg Glassman, and I have texted Greg Glassman, and he'll text me back. Like, this is there's no Kelly Starrett hustle that exists without this. So I'm always, whatever my complicated relationship with the headquarters crew, right? I've known Dave and Nicole forever. They're still people that I grew up with as teenagers and respect that growth and all the things that they did. Now, do I have to wrap my head around this as an entity? And is something lost in there? I'm sure there is.
I had this conversation with Don. I told Nikki about this, I think, a couple of weeks ago. I had a conversation with him back in August or July, probably August. I think it was at the games, if my old man brain remembers well. And I said to him, like, what is the biggest thing you're worried about, or the biggest thing you're trying to change for CrossFit in the next year or 2 years? Like, what's your main agenda? And he looked me dead in the eye, like, he didn't even hesitate. He goes, culture. Because I'm trying to change the culture from the inside out. Now, I smartly did not ask him to elaborate, because honestly, I didn't want to know at the time. I'm like, I don't know, bro. Like, I had a sense of some of the stuff he's come up against and what he's trying to do. But if that's the first thing that's on his mind, I think it certainly resonates out through the community that we're wondering, what is the cultural shift between what you're describing when Greg ran it, which was There were certainly some wonky moments and some moments where we were all scratching our head going, why is he bringing that couch into the studio? And which direction? And why did he delete Facebook and fire the media team? And like all those contentious moments, to also the Greg that we loved, where he is buying dinner for everyone and he's buying equipment for gyms that need it and donating to charities and like all that great work that he did through that time. And now you've got a private equity company on it. We're not really sure what that looks like or what that does to the people actually running the company culturally. Because fundamentally, that's what rolls down to us, is like, how's it impacting the day-to-day CFHQ employees that are working there, many of which worked under Greg?
That's interesting to me, because that culture to me actually means something very different, like a company culture. I guess it's a pretty vague term. I guess it could mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. But to me, hearing someone talk about wanting to update or alter or change company culture kind of speaks more to the emotional side, the relationship building side of how people interact both internally within the organization and also how those messages are sent externally, not only to the people who are already within the organization, so the affiliates and the coaches and the seminar staff, but also to the general public and the impression, the overall image of the brand itself. I think that is more of what I would expect to see change.
I think it's both.
And would love to see change, for the record. Would love to see change.
Yeah, they're intertwined. I think you're right. You're spot on, but they're intertwined.
Yeah, sure.
When you change a mindset at the employee level, in this case at HQ, it's certainly going to start evolving into how does that culture being pushed out to the affiliates.
Mm-hmm.
And it's hard when you go from what Kelly's describing. Correct me if I'm wrong here, Kelly, but what you're describing before is like Greg, he didn't have a problem making money, but it didn't sound like he worried about money either. At least that was always my impression of him. And now we've got a CEO coming out very clearly saying 20%. That's our profit margin that we're looking for.
Yeah.
Yeah, but aren't we doing? I'm so sorry to cut you off, Kelly,
No.
but I think you can answer this question. Aren't we doing a little bit of apples to oranges comparison?
Yes.
Because if you go back to the Dune one to one, like we're in a completely new phase of life where it's a different institution. There are different goals. We're at different scale. Affiliates want different things from the organization than they originally wanted as well. Like it goes both ways. And I don't necessarily think it either could have or should have stayed the same fundamentally or culturally or whatever. Like, I think it must grow and evolve. And part of that might be with the private equity situation or with capital coming from somewhere, but it has to in order to survive and thrive and evolve in this type of a world that we have that demands that of businesses that grow.
Is it okay for CrossFit to need to make money? Is that okay?
Yep.
Yes.
So yes. And I will tell you that the old model from before we all just go pining for the old days was, here's the line. You're on the line, you're on the team, or you're out. And you can make that choice. And it was very, very clear when the RRG came around, right? The CrossFit Risk Retention Group. We were all having a hard time getting insurance. We couldn't find people. We were actually a health spa under a tent in San Francisco. That's where we were and how we got classified. We couldn't do gymnastics rings, Olympic lifting, all of these things. It was crazy, the number of insurance companies that we had until we had the RRG. And the RRG solved the problem. But people forget that you were asked to donate $1,000 to the RRG to get it going off the ground. And your name went on a list of donations, or it was suspiciously off the list of donations that was very public and talked about. And everyone who was involved was like, well, I guess I'm never going to get this $1,000 back, and I'm making $1,000 donation to the RG, which ultimately inured in our benefit. But, it's an example of, in the old culture, we knew exactly where sort of some of the lines were, and you could either flirt with the lines or toe the line. And I think one of the things you're describing now is imagine that you want an organization that you're very proud of and that you feel these strong emotional attachments to. What does that culture need to do for that to happen? Does it just need more time? Do we have new trust? Or is it that we have so many new faces so fast that we're like, hold up, we've been here for a long time, and suddenly this feels very different. And I don't even know, the first sort of order of operations that you've done is extracted revenue from me. And I had one of my friends, Bridget, who has a small affiliate in Idaho, was like, wow, we make $100,000 a year. And that's another 2.5% that we're paying out of our $100,000 affiliate in our small gym. So again, the decentralized model, which is great because we were allowed to work fast, work free, and invent what you wanted simultaneously. I think we would love to have had a little more professionalism. Now we have this, let's just call it hyper professionalism, but we've lost all the important reasons why we'd want to have a strong culture in the first place. And I think Don is a great guy. I've known Don for a long time. I don't know anyone else except the old guard at the HQ, but I'll say that the problems are tough. And if you were an affiliate or a person concerned about this and you went to the community, and this is what you're doing, John, what problems would you solve and how would you solve them? I think that's the sort of mindset that we need to make, is that if this truly is our community, then let's ask what we want. And let's be very clear in our signaling about what we expect of our parent organization.
I think one thing that John and other affiliate owners that I have heard have been very clear about is, just to bring this whole thing full circle, is just much more robust communication. And I can respect, not an affiliate owner, by the way, but I have been coaching for 12, 13 years at this point. So I've been a part of many gyms, and I can respect that. I can respect wanting more transparency and more information and more detail on what is happening all the way up in the chain of command. But that sort of brings us back to the original question, Kelly, that you asked, which is like, are the things happening at the top of the institution